All right, welcome to the Planning Commission for January 27th, 2025, our first one of the year. We are going to go ahead and call this to order and need roll call.
I don't have a sheet. Mr. Ware,
Here.
Mr. Chiggers,
Here.
Mr. White, I'm sorry. Mr. Stokes.
Here.
Mr. Carter,
Here.
Freeman. Here. Kirkley, here. Dan,
I'm here. If all will stand, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting on December 30th of 2024. Does anybody have any corrections or any discussion, or do we have a motion?
I move to accept them.
A motion to accept. Do we have a second? All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, roll call, please.
I don't have it. Ware,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Carter.
Abstain. I was absent.
That's right, you was absent. Freeman. Here, yes. Kirkley, yes.
Is Vidal on is she on, do we know?
Her name popped up on the screen. It showed she joined the meeting, but she may says she's there right now.
What?
Fidel,
Hit admit.
Okay.
needs to admit her to the lobby.
Are you on, Miss Vidal?
Yes, I am.
All right,
I
so now
yeah, I couldn't get on before.
yeah, she's present. Yep.
Fidel,
Yes,
All right, moving on. We have no old business, so we'll move on to new business. Our first case is case number 2025-003. Is a request for conditional use for car wash on 0.91 acres with C4 zoning located at 3091 Goodman Road West by Car Club Wash Horn Lake Goodman LLC. And we're going to turn this over to our director for his presentation.
So for the introduction, we have that this location was previously approved for a conditional use permit to operate as a car wash and has been vacant since 2023. Club Car Wash is requesting a conditional use permit to also operate as a car wash on the same site. So here we have the aerial view. It's at the intersection of Two Lane Road North and Goodman Road West. And next slide, please. And so the zoning of this parcel is C4, and the adjacent zones are also C4. Next slide. So here is a street view of the site taken from Google in March 2022, and it's essentially going to look the same as this, with the only changes being to the coloring and the signage of the building. Next slide, please. And so there are no proposed changes to the plat for this conditional use application. And if anybody wants to go back and refer to any images, just please let me know. Next slide, please. And so they also submitted a site plan with this application, and same here, if anybody wants to revisit this site plan and look at any of the details in it, please let me know. Next slide, please. And just real quick on that, there are no major changes to the site. It was previously a car wash, and this company believes that the way it's set up will function just fine for them. Here I have all the requirements for a conditional use to be approved. I do this with every case, so if anybody wants to come back to reference any of these, please let me know. So next slide, please. And keep going to there we go. So as stated before, we have to review certain points for this conditional use to be approved. One of them is reviewing whether or not this will substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion. The applicant's response was there will be no increase in off-site traffic as the site has adequate on-site stacking. And so our planning staff review was that there is no indication that the use of a car wash at this location will substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion. The layout of the site and surrounding parking lot provide adequate spacing for cars entering the car wash without risk of disrupting traffic on Goodman Road. And you know, we noticed that there's always plenty of space for cars to drive in and park around the car wash at all times. So we really don't see any issues with potential congestion. Next slide, please. And so the next one is we have to investigate whether or not this will substantially increase fire hazards. Club Car Wash plans to update the exterior elevations and remove the asphalt shingled roof with a standing seam metal, which will update the building, creating a more aesthetic look. And these updates will in no way create any substantial fire hazards. And so we agree with this. There is no indication that the use of a car wash at this location will substantially increase any fire hazards. Next slide, please. And so the next one is, will this adversely affect the character of the neighborhood? So the applicant's response was, this will not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. And our planning staff review is that there is no indication that the use of a car wash at this location will adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. Conversely, it will provide a community resource to a location that is currently not in use. So we really see it better as this building being occupied and continuing its previous use rather than it sitting as an empty building. Next slide, please. And so a similar one here, we have to investigate whether or not this will adversely affect the general welfare of the city. And the applicant's response is that this car wash will not adversely affect the general welfare of the city. Planning staff does not believe that this will adversely affect the general welfare of the city, as this location was previously used as a car wash, and we did not see any negative consequences of that use at this location. Next slide, please. And we have to look at whether or not this will overtax public utilities or community facilities. The use as a car wash will have no adverse impact on public utilities. That was the applicant response. And our review is that there is no indication that the use as a car wash will overtax public utilities or community facilities. And as I kind of alluded to on a previous point, this was previously a car wash, so if there was going to be any issues with water usage, we would have known. And so we don't see that being a potential issue with a different company coming in and using it the same way. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have to look at whether or not this will be in conflict with the comprehensive plan. And the applicant's response is this car wash will not be in conflict with the city's comprehensive plan. Planning staff believes that this proposed car wash will not be in conflict with the current or future comprehensive plan being created, as it's at a major intersection. Most major intersections are appropriate for commercial uses of all kinds, so we believe it's appropriate for this to always be a commercial use at this intersection, and a car wash fits the zoning and any proposed land use that we would generally like to see on two major thoroughfares. Next slide, please. And so we just have a possible motion up here, and that concludes my presentation.
All right, does any of the commissioners have any questions for our director? Okay, is the applicant here? If y'all would like to come up, y'all can answer any questions that the commissioners may have. Does any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
We're just pleased to see somebody moving in that empty car wash.
Excellent. We're happy to be here.
That's what I was about to say, because sometimes those facilities are hard to replace. So we're just thankful it's not just an empty spot on the property.
Yeah, absolutely. We've done several in the Memphis area that we've renovated here, especially with the Take Fives that were already out here. So we're continuing to bring that on down in the surrounding markets. We are membership based, so we feel this will be a good fit for us.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Appreciate that.
I don't like the one up there. The one down here is too far to drive, and this one is just spot on.
Absolutely.
All right, any questions or any other comments?
I have one question there for you. I'm glad, I'm like the rest of the board, glad to see someone going in there. Hypothetically, if it doesn't really work out, what would you propose for the building if you close it down?
Well, those are negatives that we really don't like to think about. We haven't had any.
Oh,
close
yeah, I
down-
agree, but from here, we have them vacated all the time. and-
Understood, sir, understood. We've got 204 of these around the country, kind of through the Midwest, that range all the way from Green Bay, Wisconsin to South Texas. And we haven't had one that we've ever had to close down. I don't know that, to be put on the spot and know what would be there. I guess I can't answer that with any.
Good luck, keep it going.
So we plan to make it thrive and do good here, and I think that we can with the market that we've got just a little bit further north.
Any other questions? All right, thank y'all.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to open this up for a public hearing. Is there anybody that'd like to speak? All right, we're going to close the public hearing. Do we have any other discussion with the commissioners? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. After review of case number 2025-003, the Planning Commission recommend approval on a request for a conditional use for a car wash on 0.9 acres with C4 zoning at 3091 Goodman Road West, a Club Car Wash, Horn Lake Goodman, LLC applicant.
Do we want to put a time limit on the conditional use?
Yes. Or is it as a change of ownership?
All right, so the conditional use, so the motion's been made with a conditional use time limit of when, if it changes ownership. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second from Commissioner White. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Vidal,
Yes.
Freeman. Yes. Kirkley, yes. Carter.
Yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Ware.
Yes.
It's approved. Thank y'all. Moving on to our second case, case number 2024-167. It's a request for a conditional use permit for a used car wash or used car dealership. I'll get this right. The storage building retailer at 6723 Highway 51 North on approximately 8.39 acres by applicant SR Consulting. I will turn this back over to our director.
So this business was previously granted a conditional use permit for a used car dealership, and I have that in quotes there because that's a term specifically pulled straight from our zoning use chart. So they got their conditional use permit as a used car dealership for a period of 5 years from the date of January 21st, 2020. And then this conditional use permit has now expired, and the company is requesting a new conditional use permit for their new business model. And this new request is for a conditional use permit to operate as a used car dealership, along with the allowance to sell sheds and other similar structures on site. The use classification will still be used car dealership, as there's no category in the use chart that mentions the sale of sheds or any similar structures like that. So, planning staff recommends that the planning commission and the board of aldermen specify whether or not that additional use will be an allowable use, in addition to used car dealership use. Next slide, please. So, the used car dealership use is listed in the zoning use chart as requiring a conditional use permit with additional requirements. So it's listed as the letter C with footnote 34. And so in footnote 34, you got numbers 1 through 6. Number 1 is minimum dealership size needs to be 3 acres. There needs to be a minimum 150 feet of road frontage on the principal entrance. There needs to be a minimum 20 feet of landscape buffer along all road frontages. All parking surfaces must be paved as asphalt or concrete. No gravel is allowed. Any motor vehicle repair must be fully screened and behind the principal structure on the lot. And no temporary buildings may be located on the lot. Next slide, please. And so, reviewing those points there, the parcel is approximately 8.398 acres, so number 1's good. The road frontage is approximately 376 feet based on a rough measurement using DeSoto County GIS. So that second point's good. There's a landscape buffer between Highway 51 North and the used car lot, which is approximately 30 feet wide. So that third point is good. And then number 4, to our knowledge, all the surfaces are paved. So that one's good. Number 5, to our knowledge, all motor vehicle repair occurs behind the principal structure. So that one's good. And then for number 6, based on our reading of the ordinance, there are no temporary buildings stored on the lot, as the sheds make more sense to be viewed as merchandise rather than buildings, because our ordinance defines buildings as something that the lot owner uses to store material in. And so in this sense, the sheds are merchandise for sale. Next slide, please. So we have an aerial view of the lot there, and this aerial view comes from DeSoto County GIS, which their latest aerial imagery here is going to be from early last year, sometime winter, early 2024. So currently, if they were to do a flyover, there'd be a lot fewer cars in this picture here. And I'm not sure about the exact number of cars that were taken off of the lot, but it's significantly fewer cars now. Next slide, please. So here's the zoning overlay. This particular parcel is C4, and the adjacent zones are either M1 or C4. And C4 is commercial, and M1 is industrial. Next slide, please. And so here's a street view from Google in September 2023. Next slide, please. And so, to our knowledge, this property's never been platted, but below is a screenshot of a survey that the company did. And the company did the survey and submitted it as part of this application. And we can go back and review this if anyone has questions on it. Next slide, please. And then they also turned in a site plan in addition to that survey. And this site plan was submitted as part of a previous application. The applicant has slightly modified that previously approved site plan by showing some additional parking spaces along Highway 51 North. And when reviewing those parking spaces, we're going to follow up with them to get more clarification on the dimensions of those handicap parking spaces, because the measurements are not up to the City of Horn Lake ADA standards, but that can easily be modified. Next slide, please. And then here again, I have the requirements for conditional use. You can fast forward to right there. So the first one we have to look at is whether or not this use will substantially increase traffic hazards or congestion. The applicant responses it will not increase traffic hazards or congestion. The planning staff does not see this use as adversely affecting traffic. To our knowledge, this use has not caused any traffic issues during the last 5 years of operation. Next slide, please. We have to look at whether or not this will substantially increase fire hazards. Applicant response is that it will not substantially increase fire hazards. During our planning staff review, we contacted the Horn Lake Fire Department for their input on this, and the fire department's response and findings was that the site was found to be in violation of fire regulations a few months ago when we had initially contacted them, specifically for internal building condition issues as well as for the congested placement of vehicles behind the building, which would make it impossible for any fire apparatus to travel within the lot. We spent many weeks working with this company on getting that resolved by sending our fire inspector out there. And so during that time, the internal building issues have been corrected. And as for the other violation, the company is making very good progress on removing those vehicles behind the lot. And so we've attached the fire inspection report to this if anybody wants to review that. So our overall conclusion on that is the fire department is happy with the company's progress on removing those cars, and we can follow up on any of that if anyone has questions. Next slide, please. And then the next one is whether or not this will adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. The applicant response was that it will not adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. The planning staff review is that we agree with the applicant response as the surrounding area is industrial and commercial. So it actually fits with the character of what's around it. Next slide, please. And then this one is whether or not this will adversely affect the general welfare of the city. So the applicant response is that it will not adversely affect the general welfare of the city. And the planning staff review is that we have found no concrete evidence that this has negatively affected the city as a whole, since especially it's hard to tell because the whole area it's in is industrial/commercial. Next slide, please. Then we have to look at whether or not this will overtax public utilities or community facilities. The applicant response is that it will not overtax public utilities or community facilities. And the planning staff review is that we agree with this applicant response, as there does not appear to be any proposed large strain on water, sewer, electricity, or other city services. Next slide, please. And then the last one is whether or not this will be in conflict with the comprehensive plan. The applicant's response is that it will not be in conflict with the city's comprehensive plan. Planning staff comments shows that this proposed land use fits with those surrounding zones, and this sits along a major commercial road, which does not conflict with any of the themes in our comprehensive plan. And next slide, please. So here's a possible motion, and in this motion, we added in the, anyone can change the amount of years, but we put in for a period of 5 years, just because that's what the previous permit was for. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, does anybody have any questions for our director?
Andrew, I have a question for you. I see that lot every day, and I have noticed oil spills and stuff. Did the fire department say anything about the environmental issues going on with gas spills, oil spills?
So the fire inspector, he mentioned to me that kind of stuff on the inside of the building, but I don't recall him mentioning that for the outside. His last report didn't mention that. He had went there a few times, but we included this last report, which mentions the ceiling tiles on the inside. So when he did his inspection, one of the issues was that it was missing ceiling tiles. Ceiling tiles were falling down. That's been corrected. The fire extinguishers have been installed. And then only thing I see in here is progress is made in removing the cars from the rear lot. And the only other things I recall was equipment and car parts being stacked up in the back. And I'm actually not sure on the progress on the car parts. And
I have no problem with the used car lot out front, but I do with all of, look like the junk cars out back. That entire lot's full. They say they may have moved some cars, but the lot's still full.
yes, sir. I can follow up with the building inspector on as far as those spills goes. Yes.
Any other questions for the director?
I have a question. When the fire inspector go, did they went in a vehicle or they use a fire truck? Cause I haven't, not, he's saying, I've been having seen some, I live right in the area. The clearance, if a fire truck need to go in there, it ain't gonna be able to drive through the.
Yes. So, from what I understand, the fire inspector, I don't know what vehicle the fire inspector got to the site in, but I know that what they told me, what the fire inspector and fire chief told me was if a fire engine had to go to the back, it physically would not be possible to even enter. And there's so many cars that if one caught on fire, they would all catch on fire.
That was my observation on the plumbing side, where they go in with the commercial vehicle, the different style, it's very congested. Like when they park, you just park it there, not try to, like you're saying, you know, if a fire truck could get in, he's not gonna get it to the main entrance. It's clear.
Yes, and I know that the fire inspector said they're making progress. I don't know if that means if a fire engine can get all the way to the back or partially to the back.
I'm not worried about the back, just the front entrance, just the observation for our comprehensive plan to make it look a little popping, you know, instead of looking like 51 in Goodman with the other place.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to make it out there with the fire inspector to see with my own eyes what it looks like in the back, like on foot. But I can also follow up with the fire inspector to see if a fire engine can get all the way to the back.
Any other questions for the director?
And Drew, if we're not sure that the cars have been removed so that the fire truck can actually get back there safely to put out a fire, could this be tabled until?
Well, this is up to the planning commission. The planning commission can recommend any option to the board of aldermen, or if the planning commission desires, it could also be tabled. So there's multiple choices that y'all can definitely do.
That was my question, because it says progress in removing cars in rear lot and clearing, and no inspection scheduled for a next inspection date. Progress, if you're supposed to get half of something removed and you only moved a quarter of it, that's progress, but you still didn't meet what you need. So, and there's no follow-up, so I'm with that.
And we were kind of following the desire of the fire department, and so this is the last inspection report we got straight from the fire inspector, and I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure why he had it as no inspections scheduled. I believe he was kind of deferring. To me, that's showing that he's kind of deferring the decision to the planning commission and the board. I just feel like possibly he didn't want to make that decision for either voting member bodies.
So here's the question: if we don't table it and we was to move forward with this, and can we put conditions on the conditional use in the fact that we can it's proved subject to a satisfactory report from the fire department, or is that?
Yes, that's absolutely a possibility. I believe a reasonable condition can be approval with the condition that they show that a fire engine can make it all the way to the back lot line, or something along that line.
All right, would the applicants come up?
Yeah.
Go ahead and just state your name and address. Okay, yeah. Ms. Fidel.
Can you hear me? Can we just not put a time limit on it for it to be done within a specific time? Can you hear me?
Can you repeat it?
Can we not put a time limit so that the removal is done in a?
Oh, so she wants a time limit on the removal, so that way it doesn't drag out. They have to have so much time to do that condition. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we understood. So, does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
My only concern with the applicant, like I said, mentioned before, I live in an area, when you go on the west side, so RV or pool trailer, the commercial side, it'd be congested, like you won't put it, just park it there, there's like no emphasis on try to put it back in line, or put them in line, or put them in some sort of presentable thing, just looking like just stop and go and let it be, and it'd be sitting there like 3-4 days in the same spot. And like I said, I'm not worried about the rear. My concern is can you get to that office building so we don't lose all your documentation. And I just saying the fire truck can make the radius turn, or at least just get to the front of the building. With that, I pass.
Cindy Reeves, SR Consulting, 5909 Shelby Oaks Drive, Suite 200. Over 1,000 cars have already been taken off the lot, and they are progressively getting all those cars taken off the lot. So those cars will not be beyond the fence line.
Okay.
So, well, not, there's still, I'm sorry, Bart Thomas, 48 South Grove Park. I'm a partner in the real estate. They're able to get about 6 to 8 cars off a day, out of the back. They've, made a solid dent and made pathways for the fire department to get back to the rear fence line of the back lot. I drove through the front lot on the way over here. I didn't see any congestion in front of the building as far as any issues. I do know, like when they initially receive cars, that prior when they park them and get them ready for sale, that there's sometimes some congestion there, especially on the south side. But I didn't see any issues with the fire truck pulling up to the front of the building. That's, like I said, this was the old dealer's auto auction, prior to 2016, and this Cars Unlimited's been there since 2016. Then they had a fire, and I think it was 2019, where there was a disgruntled employee or disgruntled client that committed arson. No, ma'am, we have video footage. It was at the front of the building. Yes, ma'am. Where they set fire to it. So that's why we preserved the old auction lanes in the back for shop space after the fire. And that's when we built the new building out front and got our CO on that building. There was never any mention of replacing the ceiling tiles in the shop area. So we'd gotten our full CO and thought we were done. So we didn't know of that fire issue previously until we just had this re-inspection. Once we knew we had to replace all the ceiling tiles, we got that done.
I have no problem with you having like I say, your used car lot there. You build and you're selling and so forth. But for lack of a better term, the junkyard you got in the back there.
Yes,
what's the purpose or intent for the future for those cars?
That's what I was saying. She's planning on having at least half of those all removed. They've had over 200 removed. They're removed about 6 to 8 a day. They've sold them off. They were previously like pull apart inventory. So that's what it was previously used for. It's, Cars Unlimited is a buy here, pay here car lot. Dwayne Bradbury is the owner. He's owned it for ages. I mean, Dwayne's over 80 years old. He's a respectable man.
So you own it now?
Sir?
Are you the new owner?
No, sir. I'm partners with David Andrews. We own the real estate there we're DAA Acquisition Inc. that owns the property. We're not affiliated with the operating company's
So,
business.
I know I had another question. I know oftentimes, my family, I go eat, have lunch at Cheers on Sundays after church, and it seemed to me that some of the cars up front were inoperable. Are there any cars still like that on the front side, right there by the restaurant?
I can't say never, but I would say when I was just there a little bit ago, and I go by that lot about every 60 days. He has all inventory, that's all for sale inventory that he has on the front lot. Unless he were to receive a car that was going in the back.
So is it a used car lot?
Yes, sir.
And a pull apart? Is it both or?
Well, that's the pull apart. He keeps that stuff in the back for pulling parts it's a buy here, pay here car lot, so they maintain the cars as well. So if you needed service on your vehicle that you financed through him, you would bring it back there and they would pull a part from the back and repair it.
I just know that it's we're pro-business, of course, right? But what is kind of difficult for me to see is that every time I look over there, it's like a sore look.
Yes, sir.
And it seemed to me that even parking along that side of the restaurant, there were cars that probably we wouldn't even allow to be in somebody's driveway on the front side.
Yes, sir. As far as when it was previously an auction, there was always cars stored back there in the back. I mean, granted, these are not functional cars. I understand that, and they're removing them. I think she's trying 6 to 8 a day. So it just takes. It's going to take some time to get all that removed.
Well, as I said before about the EPA, my business is right there on Dancing Boulevard. I smell gas, I see the oil, I see the stuff out there that I feel like is not being maintained as well as it should be. And I'm directly affected by it daily.
Yes, sir.
And my employees whenever they come in. So that's the only thing I would like to see them clean up. It's an eyesore, no doubt about it, with those cars back there stacked on top of each other. And, you can see some of them from the street, and that is a busy area right in there.
Which obviously we don't want them damaging us with an environmental issue or any kind of oil or anything that's staining through the concrete of the shop in the back or anything like that where it's penetrating into the soil. We're not going to allow that. But I'm just not familiar with the other things you're talking. The cars in the back, but I'm not familiar with any other environmental issues that you're speaking of.
But we will look into it.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yes.
All right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank y'all. Y'all have a seat. All right, we're going to open this up for public hearing. Is there anybody that would like to speak? All right, we're going to close the public hearing. Do we have any other discussion for the commissioners?
Like Mr. Jimmy said, do we want to table it or move forward and let it be? Because I'm not comfortable with it. That's my side of it.
Or if we move forward, I feel like there should definitely be a time limit, like Ms. Vidal said, because they've had a conditional use for 5 years, and I feel like it's been an eyesore for 5 years. So I feel like we should definitely make it to where it gets shaped up a little bit better, a lot quicker.
And we need to add to it that if we do move it forward, we should add to it that we suggest they don't approve it until the fire department go back and do another inspection.
Andrew, could we put a condition of use on there for maybe do a code enforcement inspection, be sure they're in compliance with EPA?
I'm just trying to think about this because it still has to go to the board, so it's going to go from planning commission to the board. regardless, we're still gonna follow up with the fire department and code enforcement, just to make sure we're doing our due diligence. But I think you can definitely recommend to the board that, you approve it for, a period of X amount of years, for these two uses, on the condition that it passes an additional fire inspection and, an additional code enforcement visit. I think that's fair.
But y'all,
do-
y'all suggest shortening the years?
Say what, Ms. Fidel?
We need a time limit. I know it's okay and we wanna push it through, but we need a time limit, cause nothing is gonna be done. It's gonna be just stretch out, then do a little here, do a little there. We need a time limit for the removal. We need to make sure that's in there. Even with the inspection is a given. We need a lot cleared up.
Yes.
So I would have to make sure that it's something doable. Like you said, you can remove about 8 cars per day. I don't know how many total cars are left, and if you really want to get into that, you'd have to calculate that first. But I don't know what that total number is to make that calculation.
Nah, it'll be fine.
But you already cleared out a lot of them, I think, from seeing it, right? It don't look near as bad as it used to. On the backside.
Yes, sir.
So y'all have, I see what they're saying when they say progress. But I would suggest, a 1-year conditional use until we get to the point where we see improvements, they will have to come back here, right? And we can look at it again and see if they actually cleaned it up, and based on fire department, going back and seeing if it's. Throughout the year. Throughout the year, yes. And I think I said something else. We had about 4 conditions.
Well, would we need the conditions if we're doing it 1 year? Because it would, just.
Well, it'd be 1 year from the night that the board approves it.
Yeah.
And if I may, don't forget about the extra use being requested of selling the sheds. Because for whatever reason, shed sales are just not mentioned in our ordinance on our use chart. And so, it was a very good idea for y'all to put shed storage on your letter of intent, just to clarify, because, there are other properties in the city that sell sheds outdoors, and those have gotten complaints from business owners, saying, can you show us that this is an allowed use? And we can't show on any lot that shed sales are an allowed use. So also just don't forget about that part as well.
All right, so do we have a motion? Do we need any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe we need to go ahead and let it go to the board for their approval. But it's only gonna go to the board for a 1-year conditional use,
Unless they change it.
unless the board changes.
Yep.
With the conditions that we have laid out, like the cleanup, the amount of cars, and then, of course, the fire inspection, and then the code and EPA inspection. Because, I mean, if they're dumping oil and gasoline on the ground, I mean, that's a serious problem.
So do you want to make that motion?
I just did. But
Okay, I'm just making sure if that's what you were doing. All right, do we have a second? For
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Ware,
Yes.
White,
yes.
Stokes,
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Kirkley, yes. Freeman,
Yes.
Fidel.
Yes.
Okay.
Motion has been approved.
Mr. Chairman, before we do the gavel on it, the time on that will be a year from the date that the board approves.
Approves it,
Not today, but the date.
The board approves it, which the board will be reviewing that on, what, the January 21st? Is it the, or is it the,
That'll be February.
wait, I'm sorry, February. I'm looking at the wrong, February 18th?
That sounds correct.
The 18th, it's the second meeting, right? Yeah,
Yes, sir.
February 18th, okay.
And
Then hopefully when they come back again, then we can go back to 5 years based off the improvements.
I just need some clarification. We're both probably having to write down what the motion was.
Okay, the motion is for a conditional use for 1 year with the conditions that they have to meet fire, the fire department, any EPA regulations that may come up. And then we were allowing the shed sales.
The thing I was trying to write down was which entities specifically are doing the inspections. The fire department? Are we just needing a fire department approval?
Fire department for what they. We'll use the fire department for what they cover. We'll use code for what they cover. But if code recognizes there is an EPA problem, then it'll go to whoever it needs to go to.
And then the specific uses.
Yes, the sheds is.
The sheds and used cars, yep.
Yeah. Sheds and used cars.
And used cars, yes.
And it's the 1 year from the Board of Aldermen, not tonight.
Okay. All right. I think we got it all now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other business? So I just wanted to ask, real quick, about our comprehensive plan. We haven't heard anything about that. Are we still moving forward with that?
Yes, we are.
Okay, that's all I want to know. All right. Do we have anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We got a second? All right, all in favor say aye.